Good evening, everyone. I'm going to continue my class from where I left. I completed about the introduction of various guidelines that need to be followed for conducting clinical research. Now, I'm going to discuss principles of International Conference of Harmonization Good Clinical Practice Guidelines. I'm not going to discuss in detail about this guideline. I'm going to discuss only the principles, important principles of good clinical practice. You may be wondering, what is this good clinical practice and why a medical student, MBBS student, should know about this. As all of you know that being an MBBS graduate, as an Indian medical graduate, IMG, you are going to continuously improve yourself. How are you going to improve yourself? You have to learn new things. You have to continuously get new literatures which may be, some of them can be clinical trials, clinical research protocols, clinical research activities, and also you may have to go through various requirements that need to be followed as a doctor. So for all these things, you need to get updated. So you should be a continuous learner. So if you want to be a continuous learner, you should also know to identify the authentic information. If you want to know that which is the authentic information, if you want to differentiate which is the authentic information, I think I would like to give you one important tip. If the research is conducted as per the good clinical practice, International Council for Harmonization, good clinical practice, if the work is done as per these guidelines, then it is a authentic work. And various guidelines are there, including Helsinki declarations, Indian GCP, ICMR guidelines for ethical conduct of research. So like this, varieties of guidelines are released by every regulatory agency. Every country will have its own guidelines. So if you are a doctor, you want to do clinical research, clinical trials, for all these things you require good clinical practice. So I'm not going to detail about complete guidelines, but I would like to give you some tips, principles which are important while following good clinical practice. I would like to clarify now that good clinical practice is nowhere related to your regular treatment of your patient. Okay, you may get confused, what is this good clinical practice? It is nowhere related to your general practice. Seeing the patient, treating them, it is not at all related to it. It is good clinical practice is related to conducting good clinical research activities. Okay, so what are the important principles while you should be following while conducting clinical research activities, clinical trials, or whatever the kind of research you would like to do involving human beings? Okay, so this is the guideline which talks about this practice, that is conducting clinical research in human beings. Now let me continue my topic. Okay, so This ICH good clinical practice is having varieties of sub guidelines. Okay, varieties of sub guidelines, that is International Council for Harmonization. It is an organization, regulatory organization, which is governing majority of the countries throughout the world. Okay, so this council has released efficacy guidelines, quality guidelines, safety guidelines, and multidisciplinary guidelines. Okay, so if you want to know more details about International Council for Harmonization, you can go to website ICH. Okay, ICH website. There you will be able to, if you type ICH, International Conference for Harmonization, you will be able to get into this website, official website. There you will see varieties of guidelines. So first of all, you will know that varieties of efficacy guidelines, varieties of quality guidelines, so many safety guidelines, multidisciplinary guidelines are released by International Council for Harmonization. But ICH GCP, okay, it is also called as E6 guideline. Okay, ICH E6 guideline, that is efficacy guideline. So in this guideline, it will highlight about the methods for conducting clinical research. Okay, so now let me understand, or let me just tell you about what is good clinical practice. Okay, so what is the definition of good clinical practice? As per the E6 guideline, so good clinical practice means a standard for the design, conduct, performance, monitoring, auditing, recording, analysis, and reporting of clinical trials that provides assurance that the data and the reported results are credible, accurate, and that the rights, integrity, and confidentiality of the trial subjects are protected. You can see that it is a guideline which talks about wide number of subjects. Okay, so you can see that it is the good clinical practice guideline. It is the guideline which talks about the standard for the design. Okay, so how to design the clinical trials, how to conduct the clinical trials, how to perform the clinical trials. Okay, so proper performance of the activities, what kind of requirements to be followed, how to maintain the documentation, how to do the documentation, how to various, how the various committees can work. So like this, and again monitoring of the clinical trials that are ongoing. Okay, right from the preclinical trial set up to during the conduct of the trial and after the conduct of the trial. So monitoring and then auditing. So auditing is again throughout the trial. Auditing is done by the independent authority. Independent authority means the person who is not part of the clinical trial team. So they will be doing the auditing. And also this good clinical practice, it talks about how to do the auditing, how to do the monitoring, how to record the data. Okay, so what kind of formats to be maintained, what are the standard operating procedures to be followed, and then analysis of the data. Okay, analysis of the data that is generated, what are the procedures, suppose if some subjects are not coming regularly, what to do with such uh, data. Okay, like that. So for the analysis of the data, and then finally reporting of the preparing the report, and then submitting the report to the authorities. Okay, so what kind of report to be prepared, how to review, and how to ensure that the data that is analyzed is properly represented or not. So all these things will be discussed in this good clinical practice, especially about the clinical trials that provides So why should we do all this? Okay, so why should we do all this monitoring, auditing, recording, proper analysis? So all these things, guidelines, why that is required? It is so all these are required for ensuring the giving the assurance to the public that the work is done properly and the data is properly recorded and reported and the results are credible. Okay, whatever the results that are generated out of the clinical research are credible and they are accurate, and at the same time the rights and integrity and confidentiality of the trial subjects are protected. This is the most important one. Okay, suppose so many human subjects are getting involved, their rights, integrity, so their social integrity is maintained and their confidentiality is maintained, so that like they are also after the subject, after the participation in the trial or before the participation in the trial or during the participation, they are not, their social life is not getting disturbed, not disturbed at all. Okay, so good clinical practice guideline, it talks about the wide variety of informations. Okay, so right from the uh, preparing for conducting the trial to conducting the trial, and then after the completion, so how to manage the data and report it. At the same time, rights and integrity and confidentiality of the trial subjects are maintained. Now let us get into the individual principles. Okay, so first principle is this clinical research should be conducted as per the ethical principles. Okay, so ethical principles are defined in varieties of ethical guidelines. Okay, so every country will have a method to protect their trial participants, their countries special the trial participants. So Helsinki Declaration is the universal declaration which need to be followed throughout the world. Okay, World Medical Association released the first time in 1964, and later it is updated. 2013 is the latest one. So Declaration of Helsinki is very important, and you should read through this Helsinki Declaration. You will know that actually there is one fact is mentioned in this guideline, that is the Helsinki Declaration, that suppose you are a clinician working in the hospital, and if you come to know some new information, you are supposed to publish that, so that that will act as the evidence for further research. And suppose no treatment is available, no treatment is available for a particular disease. In that case, if you think that some drug which is found to be useful or reported to be useful and no clinical data is available at that time, if you think that is the last resort to save the patient, you can use such treatment, and then you should be reporting that data, whatever you are going to, whatever the outcome you are going to get out of such treatment should be reported as either a case report or a publication should be done, so that the further research happens in that particular area. So next ethical important guideline is good clinical practice guideline, and every regulatory, as I said, like in India, ICMR guidelines are ultimate important, and they need to be followed. Next principle. Okay, so I'm going to give only brief idea. Okay, what are the ethical principles? Okay, so ethical conduct as per the guidelines. Okay, guidelines should be followed. Next one is risk benefit ratio. Whenever you are putting any patient into the risk, at that time you should consider the risk and benefit, whatever the risks involved in that particular trial, and what are the benefits to the subjects who are participating in that trial. You should not be worried about what are the benefits for the investigators. Okay, so investigators and society comes later. Most importantly, the subjects who are participating, their life, their integrity, their confidentiality, and at the same time the treatment for the disease which they are suffering from. Okay, so for such benefits, okay, you should be worried about such benefits, how it is going to benefit. Accordingly, you should be considering the for conducting the clinical trial. So benefits should always justify the risks you are considering for the subjects. Okay, so how to decide which is good, which is bad? Suppose if something is there, okay, some treatment is available, suppose you can take that treatment, then uh, I think you can think whether this treatment can be administered for to yourself or to your relatives or to your own son or daughter. So if you think that the answer is yes, then it is the risk is justified. If you think that you cannot take and it cannot be given to your children or your kids and kin or your close relatives, then it is not a good drug or good treatment or a good trial. So you should withhold such treatment. You should not go ahead with such trials. Okay, so that's the simplest way how you can decide which is the good trial medication or which is the good trial or a bad trial. Then you should also think about what are the advantages the patient is going to get and how it is different from the existing treatment. Okay, so any existing treatment, if the patient can get more benefits than the existing treatments, then only you should put the patient into that new treatment, okay, which is under trial. Okay, now next one is, which is the next one, that is primary concern. Okay, primary concern is subjects. Okay, so you should be worried about subjects rights, safety and well-being, and you should always take measures to safeguard their rights, safety and well-being. Okay, so it is also now in India it is a legal thing. Okay, you should take the consent, you should ensure that their confidentiality is maintained, and a lot of guidelines are there, okay, in India. So it's very important for you to take the note on this, ensure that you maintain the rights and safety and well-being of the participants is taken care. Next one is experience of the investigators. Okay, so experience of the investigators are the experience about the particular drug what you are going to talk about. Okay, so what is the current status of that particular drug, whether it has crossed the earlier stages of the clinical trial successfully. Suppose a completely a new drug which is found to be useful in the preclinical studies and you want to do first in man trial, then you have to consider, you have to get the drug safety committee approval, data safety committee approval, and the ethics committee approval, regulatory agencies approval, so like this. And also you will have to plan the trial very carefully, uh, going through the 100 dose, or maybe you can plan a microdosing trial and then get into the next level trial. And with all these trials and cautions, if the results are, or earlier tests gave the positive results, then only you can go to the next level. Okay, so both clinical and non-clinical data should support the conduct of the next level trial, clinical trial. Okay, so that's the important statement you should always keep in mind. Next is you should have a well-defined, scientifically sound, clear, detailed protocol written. Okay, so you should have a proper protocol already written, and it should be undergoing ethical clearance. Okay, you should have got the proper ethical clearance, and after that only you can go ahead with the conduct of the trial. You should have written approval prior to the trial initiation. Okay, so most important, the ICH GCP guideline also details about the how a ethical committee can take the proposal, can how the ethics committee should be performed. Means the ethics committee should be constituted, and how what kind of documentations they are supposed to maintain, how to conduct the committee meetings, and how to progress further. So all these details are given in ICH GCP guidelines. So the ethics committee should be properly registered in India also. Okay, so as per the DCGI regulations, so it should be registered with the authorities, and they should review. Okay, they should review. So there is a detailed guideline available, how many people should be there and who are all should be there, like that. So I'm not going to give complete details because it is too much in the first class itself. Okay, so go through the guideline, ICH GCP guideline, who are all should be the members and all, and how to conduct. So such committee which is already registered should review the protocol and approve the protocol in written. Okay, so written approval should be available for you to go ahead with the clinical trial, and all the approval process should be, as per the ICH GCP guideline, and at the same time the protocol should be, followed properly. Okay, as per the approved protocol only. Okay, approved protocol only should be followed, not anything more. Okay, suppose if you want to change the protocol, okay, so even minor modification should be brought to the attention of the ethics committee and get their nod. So varieties of approvals, like, like amendments can be submitted to ethics committee and get their review and approval. So if it is minor, expedited review can be done. Suppose if it is a major change, then full committee meeting may be required. Next comes is the subject care. Okay, so after the initiation or before the initiation, you should have a clear inclusion exclusion criteria. Okay, at the time of initiation, you should have a clear inclusion exclusion criteria. After that, you should ensure that, qualified physician makes the decision about the patient inclusion and the complete care of the subjects. Okay, so the patients who are getting recruited into the clinical trial, all their decisions, okay, whether the what kind of medication can be given, what kind of medication can be withheld, and what kind of investigations to be done, like this, every decision should be taken by a qualified physician. Okay, qualified physician, and also qualified staff should be recruited. Both what is the meaning of qualification? Qualification of qualified physician means qualified by education, training, and experience. Okay, so similarly paramedical staff or co-investigators, everyone should be properly qualified. Okay, and they only should manage their responsibilities. Okay, accordingly, suppose a dental trial is conducted in an organization, at that time then the principal investigator should be a dentist. Suppose homeopathy trial is there, then homeopathic physician should be there. Suppose if Ayurvedic drug to be evaluated, then Ayurvedic physician should be the principal investigator. Similarly, if a like patient is involved with the hypertension, diabetes, then in that case, MD medicine person should be involved in the clinical trial as the principal investigator. So like this, properly qualified person should be there. So next is again, qualification. What is the meaning of qualification? As I said already, education, training, or experience in their area of study responsibility. So this is how it is, like how to identify the qualified person. Ensure proper documentation available for whatever it is said here: education, training, and experience. So for all these, you should have a proper documentation in place for ensuring that the person is qualified to conduct the clinical trial activities. Next is that, okay, so all the subjects, whoever is participating, So you should take the informed consent, written informed consent, which is taken voluntarily. Okay, so the subject should give the consent voluntarily prior to initiation of any clinical trial procedure. Okay, so the the informed consent should be taken in a voluntary consent. Okay, it is not forced, it should be voluntary, and the person should read the document properly, understand the contents, procedures in their own language, okay, vernacular language. Okay, so you should explain. Suppose if a Kannadiga is there, it should be explained in Kannada. Then if it is Marathi patient, if the person is a Marathi patient, then you should explain in Marathi. So like this, like India is a complex place because we have so many languages. Official languages, only 22 official languages are there. So every language, you may suppose if you are conducting throughout the country a mega trial, then at that time, then you should be able to have the informed consent in all the languages possible. Okay, so that you should be able to involve every patient that is possible in this country. Next is clinical trial data. So once how to collect the data. Okay, so all the clinical trial data recorded, handled, and stored in order to enable accurate reporting, interpretation, and verification. See, you can see here. So all the protocol, standard operating procedures should be followed in recording, handling, and storing the data. And also you should ensure that enable the accurate reporting, interpretation, and verification. Means auditing at any time, auditing by the internal auditor, internal monitor, and the external auditor, and again regulatory agency. So generally it is said that clinical trial data should be stored for at least 15 years after the completion of the trial. So that generally in India it is said that 5 years after the completion of the approval of that particular molecule. Okay, so in that way, it's important for us to store the data as long as possible, even for the verification and auditing purpose. So you can't say that whenever auditing the auditor comes, you can't say that it is burnt or it is flood has taken away. So all these excuses are not accepted. Suppose if you are not able to show the data what has been already used for conducting particular trial, then either you will be banned from conducting further clinical trials or clinical research. So or if you try reporting without proper conduct of the trial, then you may be under trouble. Okay, so you may be put into even jail also. Okay, so suppose a fabrication of data is seen, then it is very difficult, you will not be able to survive. So you may be put under imprisonment also. Next is confidentiality of the data that is generated. So all the subjects records should respect the local privacy confidentiality regulations. Every country, okay, HIPAA guidelines are there. Every country, okay, hospital information, privacy, accessibility, prevention of accessibility to general public. So all these guidelines are there. Okay, HIPAA guidelines, and every hospital will have a policy, confidentiality policy, so you should follow that. Okay, subject records respect the should respect the local privacy and confidentiality regulations. Data must not identify the patient by name. Whenever you are handing over the data to external parties, you should ensure that you will wipe off or you will cover the information and take the xerox and then give it to them, so that the patient's identity is not revealed to the general public or out of your organization. Next is investigational products related to the guidelines related to investigational products. So whatever the, as I told you that investigations is going on, this drug is not yet approved for the purpose of marketing, so it is in the investigation, it is in investigation. So in that case you should be taking care. It's a kind of it's almost like a poison, because unless it is otherwise proved it is useful, till then it is a poison. All drugs are considered as poisons unless it is proved that it is useful. Okay, that's why investigational drugs should be properly handled, accounted, and managed. Okay, so most important, and also its quality, right from manufacturing, handling, storing. So it should be as per the good manufacturing practice guidelines, GMP. Okay, so that need to be followed, and also it should be as per the protocol. So protocol should be followed in handling or handing over the drug to the patient, accounting, managing the accounts, and then returning or destroying. So everything should be as per the protocol. Then the last one is, it's very important. So quality assurance of every aspect of the trial should be done. Okay, so you should quality assurance person means these are the people who are external parties. Okay, they are not part of the clinical trial team, execution team. They are the monitoring team. Okay, so they are from the outside the organization. They can be outside the organization, or they can be independent monitors, or they can be uh, within the organization but not part of the clinical trial. Okay, so like that, so they can easily take the responsibility
So now,
managing the
after the class,
for managing the clinical trial. Okay, so like this, quality assurance is very important as far as ensuring the quality of the data that is generated and reproducibility of the data as far as it is concerned. So this is about the in brief about ICH GCP guidelines. So there is a lot to learn about this ICH GCP guideline. Just as a crisp information, I have tried giving as far as the MBBS graduates are concerned. Okay, so how you are going to use all these? If you are like nowadays, what is happening? All hospitals are getting accredited by NABH. Okay, all colleges are getting accredited by National Accreditation Council. Okay, NAC, NAC. Okay, NAC is coming, and then every lab is getting accredited with NABL. Okay, NABL. So like this, standard operating procedures are required for executing every activity what we are doing, whether it is an academic institution or a lab or a hospital, and also ISO guidelines are there. So to ensure that, to assure the quality of services what we are offering for every public, so general public or government organizations or everyone. Okay, so you may be knowing that without NABH you may not, like many credit organizations, they may not recognize you. Okay, so even if you without NABL, most of the clinical trials will not use your data. Okay, so if without getting the NAC, again maybe you may not get students in the future. So like this, if you don't show that you are following proper procedures, then it's difficult for you to survive in the future. So it's important for you to manage every data in the proper order, so that you can stand out and say that whatever you are doing as per the standards. Okay, so that's very important as far as the future is concerned. That's why so this is just a gist of ICH GCP what I have given. I hope you will read further and you will make further efforts to understand ICH GCP guidelines. And if any of you require, you can comment in the video. I will give you the link. You can search through the guidelines, go through the guidelines, and maybe in my future videos I'll be able to tell you more about ICH GCP if I conduct, and I'll anyway upload into my channel, so you can subscribe and you can be in touch with me. So this is about I'm completely concluding the drug development topic as far as it is concerned. So in future I will get into the core pharmacology subjects. okay, like pharmacokinetic, pharmacodynamics, and then ADRs, and then other subjects like essential drug concepts, so like that. So I will get into other concepts. So keep in touch. I'll come back again. Thank you very much. Okay, hope all of you enjoyed listening to me. I'll come back with the next topic. Thank you.